Hello, hello, and welcome to the All In podcast with Nate Peo. Of course, I'm your host, Nate Peo. Joined today with my guest, Kendall Warnock. Kendall runs a successful operation, A1 Automotive, which recently won the Best of Lincoln 2020 in the auto business category and also serves as a firefighter in his community. He shares how he overcome his fear of living in a bigger city and the shame of having to use food stamps and become the success he is today. Welcome to the show, Kendall. How are you?
Yeah, I appreciate it, Nate. I'm well, man. I'm
Good.
well. I'm pretty good day here in Lincoln, Nebraska. So
I know we're both Nebraska people. Lincoln, Nebraska, for those that don't know, has a pretty big, like, if you meet somebody and they tell you they're from Nebraska, all of a sudden I think there's some camaraderie, some instant bond, no matter where you're at in the world. But
right, right.
it's
It,
just
when Nate, when you said when we linked up and you said, "Hey, I'm from Lincoln, Nebraska," I thought, you know what? I already like this guy and I don't even know it. So that's the kind of bond you're talking about for sure.
Yeah, it typically is. That's how I've gotten a few of my jobs in life, was just like the person I was interviewing with was from Lincoln, Nebraska.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they're like, as soon as they tell you that, you're like, oh, well, this is, we're gonna get the job. Like, it's just
You're all in, right? You're
yeah,
all in.
that's exactly it.
Right.
So, I want to get into your story, but before we do, I want to lead it off with a question of, what does it mean to you to be lucky? Are people lucky?
Um, I think there's a little bit of luck involved in life. I've asked myself that question multiple times. Like how do you get to where you're at, and whether you deem yourself as success or you're down that path of trying to find what success is. Um, I would say there's a little bit of luck involved in life.
Yeah, I think it has to do with some things that come your way, the experiences you have, or the opportunities, and then it's up to you to take advantage of them. So let's talk a little bit about your story. Now, Lincoln, Nebraska is a town, I don't know, was about a couple 100,000
Yeah,
people
about
now,
about 300. Yep,
about
yep,
300. So it's not super small. It's not super big either. It's a big college town. I think, a good portion of the population is made up by college students. Um, but the surrounding area has a lot of really small farm towns and
yep.
people that come from, different backgrounds. And you're one of those people that didn't grow up in Lincoln, right? So talk a little bit about your story and, your experience growing up.
Yeah, yeah, Nate. So I grew up in a village called Rosalie, and it's on the Omaha Indian Reservation in northeast Nebraska, kind of up by Sioux City, Iowa. That's kind of where hey, you know where Sioux City, Iowa is? It's kind of by Sioux City, Iowa. That's how I explain it. The um, village has 90 people in it still, probably less than 90 right now. So there just wasn't a lot of opportunities back home, right? So it's either you were you grew up and you were a banker, or you were a farmer, or you sold insurance, and that was the options back there. Um, when I graduated high school, my father ran a repair facility, automotive repair facility. So I thought, you know what, that's all I knew. I went to Norfolk. I got my degree in automotive technology. I then tried to tell myself it wasn't for me. I wanted something different, maybe not more, but just something different. So I found myself in Lincoln, Nebraska. And at the time, Lincoln, Nebraska, here I am from a village of 90. There's a bunch of stoplights, and things were just moving at a pace where I didn't know if I could survive, literally, because of such a small community. I was, no stoplights back home. Everybody knows everybody. If you needed a loaf of bread, you ran across the street to the neighbors type of community in a village that small. So here I found myself in Lincoln, Nebraska, and it was year 2000, I believe, is when I got into Lincoln. I just didn't know how life worked. I was still trying to figure out, we're still trying to figure that out. I'm still trying to figure that out. But, when I was that young, I didn't know literally how I was going to survive in a big city, right? A big city of Lincoln, Nebraska. So that's where we talked about a little bit of luck. And I think I had that.
Yeah. So it's funny you say like moving from a small city to the big city of Lincoln, Nebraska, and if people came from somewhere else, they'd probably think that was
That's what I know.
quite funny. But I moved to California in 1999, and I went from a town of 300,000 people, Lincoln, to LA and Los Angeles and the Los Angeles general greater vicinity. So I think it was like 12 million people. I went from some place where if you wanted to go from one side of the town, it was like a 20-minute drive. And if your car broke down, right, you trusted that the people were looking out for you in your best interest to get stuff fixed, or if you needed help, you had some help. And I remember moving out to Nebraska, and my car broke down on the side of the freeway in on a Sunday afternoon, and I didn't know anybody, right? And I didn't know the areas. I didn't even know if I could get off on those exits because, like, you're from Nebraska and you're just reading, like, hey, you know, some parts of LA are not real safe to get off on.
I'm sure.
And you don't know like what exit to go. You don't know where to, you know, who to call for help. You don't know if you should take your car to a dealership. I remember being really frustrated for like the first 6 months. Not like I felt like a lot of stuff just kept going wrong, and I wasn't sure how I was going to deal with it. I wasn't sure how I was going to overcome it, and I was like lost in this big city. So I kind of relate to your story there from a different point of view of going from a smaller town to a big city and just being kind of like a fish out of water. One of the stories that you're talking about in your intro was you grew up poor and you were, you know, had a lot of shame with being poor, but you decided one day that that wasn't for you and you weren't going to look back, and you changed your approach to life. Can you talk a little bit about that story and how that mind shift happened?
Yeah, you know, and there's a little bit of obviously a little bit of luck involved there too. You know what, Nate? So we grew up back home. All we knew was commodities, which is government assistant food program, and food stamps. And the challenge was, how can you break that? How can you break that mold? You have to have a little bit of luck. You have to have a lot of hard work, etc. So I found myself, you know, year 2000, I found myself literally sitting outside of a Shopko, 27th and Cornhusker. It was late. I was waiting. I was literally waiting in the parking lot for the least amount of people in Shopko because I needed to go in there and use food stamps to purchase groceries. And I didn't, like, I literally sat in a Ford Escort. I think it was like a 1984 Ford Escort. And I thought to myself, well, I was somewhat ashamed. I didn't quite know if I was going to be able to stick, quote unquote. Many times I thought to myself, shit, why don't I just go back home? I mean, I literally thought Lincoln, as big as Lincoln is to me, and it was at that time, I didn't know if I could survive, literally. So I waited outside, and I went in, I bought, I don't know, $90 worth of groceries, and I kept the last food coupon that I have in my hands right now. And it's a $10 value, so I spent most of the money that night. But that was on 9/27 of 02. And, you know, this was at midnight, 12:30 in the morning. And I thought to myself, okay, either I'm going to make a change with a little bit of luck involved to be able to be whatever success is to you, to me, to everybody. I just wanted to make, create a different opportunity for myself and for my future family too. So that night I thought, you know what, if I've got to get three jobs, I had multiple jobs there and after. I was in and out of, paycheck advances for 18 months before I finally was able to start supporting myself without government assistance. So again, a lot of hard work, a little bit of luck, and a lot of determination. And that's kind of what I attribute it to.
Yeah. So you talked about, you know, getting one, being on government assistance, and then two, getting off that. I think there's a lot of people that maybe have some preconceived ideas about what that means to actually be on it, that, you're not working hard, or you're not, you're just lazy, I guess, and you're on it. And then to get off of it is just a choice you make to just, hey, just do slightly better, get a job, and get off of it. But from the sound of it, getting 3 jobs is a lot. That's a lot of work to put in, and that's a lot of stuff. If you had, I don't know if you had kids and a family at that time, but if you do, to raise a family with 3 jobs is still tough. So there's quite a bit of effort that takes to dig yourself out of that hole. Would you, what's kind of your take on that, when people's thoughts on the government assistance programs?
Well, the challenge is, the hand that you're dealt, right? I mean, is it, has your family struggled with being in poverty? And I would say, we were definitely in poverty. I remember multiple times that, we had to go borrow, literally loaves of bread across the street, like I indicated earlier. So the preconceived notion of people being on government assistance is, okay, so they're on government assistance, but how did they get there? And everybody's stories are different. If it's just literally the families have just had low income jobs, in communities like the village of Rosalie in Northeast Nebraska, there's no high paying jobs. So I would say 35 to 40% of a couple of those counties back there in Northeast Nebraska are still on 100% government assistance. So it's, what's the hands that you're dealt as a family? What opportunities can you create for yourself to better your life? And again, sprinkle a little bit of luck and relationships that you build along the way that helps create those opportunities.
Yeah, very cool. So, you've obviously turned your life into, I guess, a success story. You've created a business of your own. You became a firefighter. When did you decide to create that business and take that step to become a firefighter? And what was some of the adversity you overcame in the process?
Well, again, so what I did know and what I knew I was really good at was repairing vehicles. Again, lived in a filling station with my father when I grew up. And in 2000, it would have been 2004, is when I was working for a car dealership, a GM car dealership. I knew I was really pretty efficient at repairing vehicles. In 05, I decided to start my own shop. Now, again, small business is tough. I mean, I don't know what the percentage of small business that makes it and it doesn't. We're getting better. We're always evolving, getting better, even to this day. But in 05, I had a toolbox. I had a desk, and I started that journey of small business. Made a hell of a lot of mistakes. Got to the point where I could start hiring some folks. Now I've got 5 folks down in downtown Lincoln at a repair facility that does pretty well for us. I pivoted into the fire service in 2010. So I had some city leaders that come to me and said, "Hey, we need some help. We believe that you can be that help for us." So again, pretty blessed to have some opportunities come my way. And I think, Nate, I mean, you've been around long enough. You're out in California. You understand, and everybody that listens to your podcast understands the power of relationships, right? So again, I just fortunate enough, blessed to be in front of some people at the right time, the right place, that created opportunities for me. So the small business is going well. COVID has taken its toll, obviously, on everybody in 2020, but we're working through that. The fire service is a blessing. I'm able to give back to the community in that regard too.
Yeah, very cool. And I think growing up in Nebraska, I think that instilled a lot of that community building, the power of relationships and networking. It's a small town, and you don't know everybody, right? You know a lot of people, and usually know somebody who knows somebody. And so it's small in that sense. And then even though there might be like differences, like when you're in town, like we were talking a little bit about like where we went to high school, like
Yeah.
the people from one high school might not get along with some people from the
Right.
other high school in
Right.
town. But if you go and bump into them anywhere else in the world, it doesn't matter what high school they went to or what they did, as long as you got a Nebraska football. You got to easily bond to discuss a
Right.
topic that everybody's passionate about.
Right.
And very rarely, I think it's a real anomaly where you could have somebody that has a polarizing opinion on Nebraska football. So like
Yeah.
you always just like have a safe thing to just bond and chat with somebody. And
Right.
it does instill that community. And how important that is to lean on relationships when you need to make a change in life, whatever it is you want to do. Usually like to ask my guests what it means to them to be all in on an idea or an outcome.
Well, idea and outcomes, all in is focusing. For me, it's focusing every single amount of energy that I have to that situation at that given time. So whether it's whether we're going through again COVID, I mean if you didn't have your hustle going through COVID, if you didn't find your hustle going through COVID, you just didn't have it in small business, because it literally created a huge gap for us. 40% drop off in revenue for 5 months in a small business is almost crippling. So I was all in terms of finding different ways to reach our customers, whether we created pick up and drop off of vehicles. We created a decon policy that we clean the vehicles after our service, took them back to the customer. So being all in is trying to create the outcome that you want, and fighting through adversity at the same time.
Yeah, I love that answer. And when COVID went down, everybody was like uncertain, right? They were very like, hey, this could be like 2 weeks, this could be like 2 months. Nobody really knew. And I remember a lot of people were just like, there's two kind of mindsets, I think. I'm generalizing this, but like there's the people that were like, hey, it's going to be like getting, drinking every night and hanging out on the couch and doing reruns and Netflix marathons. And then there's other people like, hey, I'm going to do something with my time, and I'm going to do self-improvement. And some people is like what you were doing, like figuring out ways to do your business. Other people are learning side hustles or learning skills, learning other opportunities and using their knowledge. But I think COVID, like it exposed a lot of stuff. It's like, hey, when times are good, your business is successful as kind of a function, just like, hey, times are good, so you're good. Like you don't see where the problems are. But when things bad happen, you're kind of exposed, right? The tide went out and you find out who's wearing their swim trunks. And that's a famous Warren Buffett, Nebraska, the Oracle of Omaha says, when the tide goes out, that's when you find out who's swimming naked.
Right.
And I think a lot of people discovered that. And so some people leaned into it and go, hey, look, I'm not going to wait and find out like when things are going to go back to normal. There's not going to be a going back. It's just going to be a continuation, and we're going to learn and adapt and lean into wherever that might take us. And so I applaud you for, sticking through and facing adversity in this, to find ways to continue to grow your business. And then, I think you're going to have a lot of, ground that you gained on people and left some other people in the dust when things do ease up and things get back to more of a normal course of business. You're going to have a lot of places, like things in place that are going to set you apart and take you a lot further than you probably would have otherwise.
Yeah. Thank you.
So let's talk about where, like, who is your ideal audience? Who are the people that, really work the best with you? Like, what sets you apart from, using maybe a different repair shop down the road?
Yeah. So Nate, I mean, for us in Lincoln, it's our slogan is always honest answers. And and I think and most of your audience know that vehicle repairs, and we do everything. We do everything from BMWs to Audis to Dodges to Chevys to Fords. But there's always a little bit of, hey, is that guy being honest with me? right? With car repairs, vehicle repairs in general. That's really what you're getting with us. And you know, we have repeat customers, word of mouth, all of that stuff matters to us. And we're built on values, literally a village value, right? Of helping your neighbors and doing what you can for the community. So that, in terms of small business, is certainly what sets us apart in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Yeah, I think car repair shops do get a bad rap of,
Yeah, for sure.
you have no idea if you're being told the truth that this is needing to be fixed, and
Yep.
and the disparaging, or the disparaging is not the right word, but like if you take your car to one place and another place, like you can get two different answers,
Yeah.
and two different
Yep.
prices, and two different solutions, and it's like,
Yep.
well, what is the right thing? So
Yeah.
awesome
Yeah.
stuff. So where can people go if they want to get connected to you?
Hey, so you can find me on Facebook, on Instagram. Those are the two platforms that I use the most. LinkedIn, I've been using quite a bit lately as well. So I'm just trying to kind of grow my audience of people that believe in themselves, and successful people that may need help, folks that may be in a position that I was in 15, 20 years ago that I can help. So again, LinkedIn, Facebook. My LinkedIn handle is just Kendall Warnock. My IG handle is KS Warnock. And you can find me on Facebook at Kendall Warnock as well.
Very cool. So all those links will be listed in the show notes, and I encourage everybody to reach out and get connected to Kendall. Tell him hi. Tell him you heard about him on the All In podcast with Nate Pale. And I do want to say it's inspiring to tell your story, because like if I had just met you or had just started following your Facebook feeds or your Instagram feeds, I wouldn't have known that you had this backstory. I've been like, of course, you've been successful. Of course you have a small business that does well. Of course you're in the fire department. Like life's going great for you, but you don't realize that like you've had this struggle, and because you're sharing your struggle, there's other people out there that will relate to it, in various stages of their life, and going, hey, if somebody else has shown me that something is possible, now I see a path to the possibilities. Absolutely. And that I can change my life if I want to. So man, good stuff for sharing that stuff. It's not anything that's always easy for people to talk about the past, when it's not a place of, where there's super proud of it, but I think you do have a lot to be proud about of overcoming adversity in your story. So
I appreciate awesome, that, man. Nate. Thank you so much. So
awesome. Thanks for coming on the show. What was that?
I appreciate that, Nate. Again, I'm thankful for the opportunity today, and always love chopping it up with a guy from Lincoln, Nebraska. So
all right, man. Thank you.
All right, man.
Talk soon.
Okay, take care.